We are the Kaleidoscope Plus Group. We're a leading national mental health and wellbeing charity. We champion change and we promote positive mental health across the communities that we serve. We believe that mental health and physical health are equal, and it's time to end the disparity that we have between the two. My name is Faye, and in this video we're going to be exploring some of the signs and symptoms associated with mental ill health, and we are going to also be talking about where you can go to access support. There is no shame in talking about mental health. So you at the GMS Group do fantastic work providing security, looking after others and protecting people. But I want to talk for a minute about how do you look after yourself and how do you protect your mental health? When you go onto an airplane, the air stewards will always do a health and safety talk. In this health and safety talk, they will always say, in the event that the cabin loses pressure, you must put your own oxygen mask on first. They say this because if we're not able to look after ourselves, we're not going to be able to look after other people. This is a really important message for you to be thinking about around your own mental health. The better we are at looking after ourselves, the better we are at protecting others. It's really important that we're able to notice in ourselves when we start feeling stressed. Stress is a perfectly normal part of life. We need a bit of stress to motivate us. However, we need to also take notice of when we start feeling overwhelmed and we become overstressed. I want to share with you a model that we use to manage our stress, and it's called the stress container. How we manage stress is the important part. The stress itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's how we manage the stress. Now, we all manage stress in different ways. So here you'll see a container and stress flows into that container. If we are not managing our stress effectively, the container builds up and up and up and up. If we are not able to release that stress through helpful coping mechanisms, for example, exercising, talking to somebody, maybe even just taking a break for a few minutes, what will happen is the stress overflows. And when the stress overflows, we call this emotional snapping. Now, let's be honest. We have all emotionally snapped at some point, haven't we? This might be potentially snapping at a loved one. It might be we have conflict at work. But it's really important that we know when our stress container is overflowing so we can address that. A really good way of releasing stress is to find ways every single day that we can relax and we can refresh and reflect. Thinking as well about this, if we have unhelpful coping mechanisms to our stress, that tap that you can see becomes blocked up. And when the tap becomes blocked, again, it's going to overflow, and again, we will emotionally snap. So some unhelpful coping mechanisms could be the use of recreational drugs. It might be excessive gambling, excessive drinking, and it's just important to know that if we have too many unhelpful coping mechanisms, we are more prone to emotional snapping. Now, we can take this even further. If our stress becomes unaddressed and we end up in a cycle of emotional snapping and not having effective coping mechanisms, we can start developing the symptoms of mental ill health. Now, some common mental health illnesses include depression, which is persistent sadness and low mood over a period of time. Anxiety, which is constant worry or fear, and this affects us physically as well as mentally. Maybe it could be the development of an eating disorder, such as anorexia or bulimia. And maybe even psychosis. People can develop symptoms of psychosis where they may hallucinate or have thought disorders. So we may not think that stress is that important, and we may think that we are managing our stress well, but it doesn't do us any harm to address our stress and start thinking about helpful coping mechanisms. You will see here some signs and symptoms of mental ill health in the workplace. Decreased productivity, morale problems, lack of cooperation, safety problems, absenteeism and presenteeism, frequent complaints of being tired all the time, unexplained aches and pains, and alcohol and maybe other drug misuse. These are really, really important signs for you to look out for in yourself and your colleagues, because often when these behaviours are displayed at work, we can judge these as somebody maybe not pulling their weight or being lazy at work. We need to take these signs seriously and recognise these as symptoms of mental health. There is no shame and there should be no judgment if you or anybody you know is experiencing these signs and symptoms. We will be looking shortly at where you can access support if you recognise any of these signs and symptoms. If you are experiencing any of these signs and symptoms of mental ill health, rest assured that you are protected under the Health and Safety Act. Employers have a legal right to protect you and colleagues from becoming unwell at work. You will see here key legislation relating to mental health. We understand that you at GMS may often work long hours, isolated. You may not always be in a position where you can reach out to a colleague, especially working long shifts and at night. So I want to talk a little bit about how we look after ourselves. Self-care is really important in protecting your mental health. Self-care is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Here you will see the case for self-care. Life is busy and there's always going to be other things that we need to do, whether it's at work or at home. It's often the first thing that we do sacrifice. But if we are able to look after ourselves and doing things that we enjoy outside of work, we will perform better at work. It has been proven that looking after ourselves prevents burnout, it will help your relationships, and it will make you more effective. Self-care is not selfish. I'd like us to look next at a really effective model for self-care. You may have seen this before, the 5 ways to mental well-being. The 5 ways to mental well-being was introduced by the New Economic Foundation way back in 2009. The reason why this was introduced is because for many, many years prior to 2009, there was lots and lots of fantastic health initiatives around physical health, and rightly so. We know what we need to do to look after ourselves physically. We need to get plenty of fresh air, we need to eat well, sleep well, we need to exercise. But we also now know the importance of looking after up here as well. You will see here the 5 ways to well-being. We have keep learning, connect, take notice, give and be active. We at the Kaleidoscope Plus Group want you at GMS to be thinking about ways that you can incorporate these into your daily life. It has been proven that if we're able to incorporate all of these, we will feel happier and healthier both at work and at home. If you are experiencing any symptoms of mental ill health, we at KPG encourage you to seek support. There is no shame in accessing support. The real shame is living sad, living lonely and feeling overwhelmed. We can end the stigma around mental health by talking about it and sharing our own experiences. But we understand that this isn't always easy. But we do urge you to seek support. Here you can see some useful resources provided by KPG. We have a Talk to Us service, which is a phone line. We have a text service. You may find this beneficial if you are working long hours and you need to access support. You can do both of these confidentially. We also have a self-help toolbox and a self-care starter kit on our website, so please do visit our website for our useful resources. Also as well, please do follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn, because here you will find the most up-to-date information. I look forward to working with you further and discussing how we can end the stigma around mental health.